parents. They're tired. So we've got high school teachers trying to modify that as well and say, okay, take 10 minutes off, go do this, and come back. So, and I think for all of us, I feel like we've been doing this for 6 years. We've been doing it for 6 weeks. You know, this November, we started September 15th. So it really is just one marking period, but it feels like a long time. So as the teachers develop their craft, and we're hearing the feedback from students, I don't want to put a kid in front of a computer for that long. I think they're tired. We all get tired if we have to sit here for hours and listen to a lecture, do some academic work, and then do work at home after that. So I appreciate that. We're going to continue to work on that middle school model as well, and take feedback from parent conferences, particularly because we've just had them. I think one of the benefits of this pandemic is the Meet the Teacher conference model. You didn't have to go anywhere. You could do it at home. I'm doing that tomorrow night with my kid. It's great. We don't have to sit there and sit in a chair. So I think one of the things about this, as we've had to change our way of thinking, it's beneficial for a parent, for a teacher in this new technology, in this new era to be able to do that. But thank you for that feedback.
I just want to echo what you just said. Sometimes sitting in front of the screen all day, and sometimes we want what we can't have, right? So I'm hearing from middle school parents who want that live streaming all day. Well, I also have a child who is on that live streaming all day, and wouldn't you know, her teacher went out for a certain period of time, and she felt relief, because she says, oh, now I've got some independent work that I'm doing, and I don't have to sit there and stare at the lecture all day.
Right. So that's it.
Right, it's a give and take, so
Appreciate
thank you.
Hillary.
I obviously agree with what everyone's saying. I think the governor doesn't quite get it. I think that one of the things, because I work in a school, I think one of the things that parents and people on the committee need to understand is in the 6 hours that we're there are many days where I'm wearing my mask the entire time, the 6 hour time, because I might not have a class for a mask break, or I myself am not comfortable. A day like today, it was 30 degrees outside. I didn't take my class outside for a mask break, but what many teachers are doing is they're taking students outside for a mask break because we're concerned with a class of students having their mask off, even though they're 6 feet apart for a certain amount of time. In between every single class period, at least at the secondary levels, we're washing desks, washing desks, washing desks. Kids have mandatory hand washing breaks throughout the day. So there are teachers with multiple degrees, myself included, and we're walking kids to the bathroom or a hand washing station and making sure that they're washing their hands. There are things that are happening in schools that are making them safe. You know, we joke at my school that being in a school is the safest place to be right now because we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. It is really concerning. You know, I do understand the educational and the academic and the socio-emotional concerns that parents have. You know, I have them myself. I also, from an educational standpoint, as a teacher, the hybrid model is exhausting. I don't know how sustainable it is on the educational side. There's a lot of things going on, but I do think that right now most districts, I know my own children, they're first and second graders, they're in the groove, right? We're in a routine, and I think that is what kids need, and we have one. It's not perfect, but we have one. And I feel comfortable sending them to school, and I never thought I would say that, right? I never thought I would be comfortable going to school, but I am closer to people in a grocery store than I am at some points to students in a school, just the way it is, and I think everybody needs to keep that in mind. You know, the governor and people are telling us we can't have our whole family over for Thanksgiving, but you can walk into, I'm sure the gym probably has hundreds of kids eating lunch in there at a time, right? So those are all things that we need to keep in mind when we're making these decisions, talking about obviously logistically moving desks and things like that, but the safety piece, right? Why is it safe? Why isn't there transmission in school? It's for those reasons. You know, I think the shift would be perhaps maybe after the new year, right? Because we know right now we're in an uptick, right? So anybody entertaining bringing people back and getting rid of the 6 feet, I don't think is wise. But January, February, March, you know, what is it going to look like, right? I mean, that's what I think. We just have to get through the winter, right? And then see where it is on the other side before we start pushing it. So
one of the things on that is we'll continue to revisit and where we're going to be. But I did want to lay out the time, the bringing desks back, that's not going to change overnight. So if we decide as a committee in January, hey, we're going to come back full in, I'm going to need a month. I'm going to need a month and a half or 2 months to bring everything back and break things back down. It can't be overnight. And I think people's perception is, wow, you can just go. There's a lot of, we spent all summer doing that, is breaking it down and figuring out how we're going to do it. So it's not going to be an overnight. So if we see a vaccine and the vaccine comes out and people are getting it, and I've been in contact with Chief Greno about distribution of that vaccine and using school buildings if necessary. So those are the things, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork at this meeting of where we're at, and it'll be a continual that we're bringing back the COVID team to look at the feasibility / realistic ability of us to bring back kids. And I agree, the uptick piece. The other piece that I just wanted to mention was we will have some parents, if this committee decides to go full in, parents will choose to go full remote. And that will change the dynamic. What I'd hate to have, especially at the elementary level, is their student being in an elementary classroom, and I'm going to have to reshift that classroom teacher to remote and break up the continuity of that class because we get double the amount of elementary kids. So that's just one thing.
I'm sorry. I just have a question about that. I mean, this is just a curiosity question on my end. So when the DESE guidance first came out in whatever it came out that said, you have to offer remote, I guess my question is, what is is it out of the goodness and the understanding of people aren't comfortable that we're offering remote, or is it, and not right now, I'm saying if we were to say we're going full back in person, what determines why we're offering remote to everybody?
So great question, because we are posing this question to the commissioner tomorrow as a superintendent's group. He has to make a determination whether or not we're going to offer remote to kids next year. Because he did say people can go remote this year. I think it was around trying to get kids back into a formal education. I think, and I don't know, George and I were on that phone call when we thought the platforms, and remember I explained the 4 platforms of what I think he thought every person who was going to go remote wanted to choose this remote platform. Well, that didn't work, and that didn't work in a lot of districts. So we have these, and one of the superintendents today said, the commissioner has to make a decision. It was the Norwell superintendent who said he has to make a decision because I can't afford to have remote learning next year and in-person learning. Financially, I can't do it, and feasibility, I can't have kids there. What Mr. Tuffy had said, because he's a wise retired business manager, said the commissioner made a mistake. Kids who used to go remote could choose to go school choice, and they could choose 1 or 2 options. The commissioner opened the door, and this isn't school choice. It was the district would have to fund. Now, we fund school choice as well, but it would be more difficult for a parent to go school choice, to go to a Tech Academy or a Greenfield Academy full-time. So I think he wanted to get parents back. I think it was a good decision in the fact that some parents, their children are immunocompromised, somebody in their house is immunocompromised. It's not a bad decision, but it won't be sustainable in fiscal 22 or in school year 21-22. I can't sustain, and this comes up with high school, we will not be able to go full in-person with 23 kids in a classroom and 4 remote and teachers live stream. They will not be able to teach 23 live and on a computer. It's not going to work. We can do it now because it's a split. Classes 8, classes 9, classes 10, and that's still really difficult. And I think Mr. Kafka could attain to that it's hard to teach that. But the fact is, if we were to come in full, that's a piece that live stream's not going to work either. So I think it was to get kids back in, to make people feel comfortable where we were in August. But that's a question that we asked our leadership to ask the commissioner. We do have a 3 o'clock conference call with him tomorrow, and I know that's a piece of it. He's going to probably get lambasted tomorrow a little bit by superintendents because we were on the firing line of this discussion on November 4th or whatever the date was. But I think that remote option is not going to be feasible for us. However, if that's a mandate, if DESE mandates that, think about this, folks. we have 6 schools right now, really 7, because I have 500-plus students in remote learning with a principal. I'm going to have to sustain that with something else other than a principal, because our counselors are working with those students. I have 2 special educators working with those students. I have multiple services that we are providing in an online academy, really, for our kids. So somebody had mentioned about the FY22 budget, and John's going to talk a little bit about budget, and I don't want to go too deep. But when I say I don't know what that looks like next year, I have an idea, but if the commissioner says you have to provide PPE, sanitization, if you have to provide deep cleaning and an online school for your kids, we're talking $1 million+ that is not in the district budget. And that's not out there, so folks don't write that in stone. But that's what I'm looking at. If we have to sustain a remote platform for our students in school year 21-22, we have to re-envision how we're doing our budget for next year. And that's a reality. So when I say we don't know what it's going to look like, I don't have an FY21 budget yet, never mind the FY22 piece. That's where I'm speaking from. It's not because we're not prepared, it's because we are still trying to deal with COVID and the directions of the state and the governor and the commissioner.
Mr. Small,
Yes,
thank you for your patience.
I'll be as brief as I can here.
Thank you.
Couple things to bring out, then a couple quick questions. One, the city of New York, 1.1 million students. They went on 100% remote today because the determination that the city has reached a 3% testing positivity, 7-day testing threshold. Now, I looked up the November 11th data for Hanson and Whitman. Hanson's at 2.78%, and Whitman's at 4.71%. Little on the scary side. You know, we're much higher. Number 2, the governor's own words were every district is going to be different. And, you know, I think that's something, you know, to take into consideration. You know, every district is going to be different. The positivity rates are different. You know, the health, safety, and security of us staff, you know, and their comfort levels, that has to be taken into consideration. I'm willing to make a motion right now that we don't consider going back to in-person learning for a minimum of 90 days. It can be a little bit greater than that, but I mean, even to consider it, I don't think would be a proper thing to do right now. And I just wanted to, you know, bring those things out. And then I did have a question or two about flu shots and what the status is of those, if anybody knows as far as that goes.
I can answer the question on flu shots, yeah. Students are supposed to have flu shots by December 31st. I'll send out a reminder to parents that school nurses will be collecting that information. However, DPH guideline says we cannot prohibit a student from being in school without a flu shot. So the governor said yes, and DPH says no. So we will be collecting that data, and I hope everybody gets a flu shot. That's my official word on that, best I can do. We don't have a guideline that's consistent. But the governor said students should have flu shots by December 31st. I know a lot of our students do get flu shots, they just don't send their paperwork in. We're going to be asking for that paperwork. But Lisa Tobin did call DPH, and DPH says we cannot prohibit a student from attending school without certain immunizations, so.
Fred, I heard you make mention of a motion. You willing to let it ride for a month? I didn't really hear you make it or get seconded to let the superintendent see how this works out through the December break into January?
No worries there at all.
Thank you. I didn't want to skip over a potential motion. So you're good.
I'm good.
Thank you. Next.
I'm good with COVID. John, you want to come up and give a little bit of an overview on budget, where we're at?
So to talk briefly about budget, starting with the expense report that you people have, and it is the thicker of the two handouts that you received. As we look at spend rate this year compared to last year, we're about on par, which frankly surprised me. Overall, we've actually spent a little less at this point in the year than we had last year, And as strange as this year has been, we're starting to see some patterns. It turns out that an awful lot of our budget is sort of fixed. And so that underpins what we're doing when it comes to insurance or utilities, those kinds of things, maintenance in the buildings. That's going to be kind of a constant number. Overall, when we look at what's going on, what we find out is that utilities are costing more than we had budgeted and had expected compared to last year, but we knew that was going to happen because of changes in requirements over air exchanges in the building. And so we're heating a lot more air, we're cooling a lot more air and dumping it outside. When we look at the nurses' supplies, exclusive of PPE, they're really very small budgets, but they're actually larger than they were last year, the actual expenditures, and that kind of makes sense because we're seeing more use in those rooms. But it's not related particularly to COVID. There are some areas that we still have big questions on. Unemployment is one of them. In the public sector, we don't pay unemployment insurance. A business pays a certain percentage of their payroll for unemployment, and that's how it's funded. In the public sector, we pay on an occurrence basis. When somebody collects unemployment, we get a bill. It equals the amount that somebody's collecting. You may have heard that there have been a lot of fraudulent claims that have been made. It's not related to anything that we've done here. It's related to the system. And so we haven't gotten a true unemployment bill at this point that we know exactly how much it is. Now, we do get the claims that come in. They come in every week. Mary Jo Lipton, who I think you all know, spends an inordinate amount of time looking at them and tracking them down and notifying people that this claim has been made, it's fraudulent, and the state is just overwhelmed at this point in time. It's taking quite a bit of time to clean up those bills.
So let me just chime in on that, too. We've had 49 fraudulent unemployment claims, the superintendent and assistant superintendent included, and the president of the association.
I got it too.
Yep. So George was yesterday, or Monday. I was the first in June. Digging down deeper, it's not necessarily a school issue, it's not a data breach, it's not that. All of us are public employees, and our names and our titles and our salaries are in town reports. And the scammers are looking at that, and then they can Google our addresses and file a claim. So Mary Jo is our watchdog. She gets the claim, denies the claim, and then sends the information to us, and then we take appropriate action as far as notifying our local police departments, notifying unemployment. But I just wanted to let the committee know, she sends me a report every Tuesday. As of yesterday, it's 49 included, and it's quite a few of us.
Any questions for
So
John?
almost an answer to Chris's question last month, which was, so what do I worry about? What do I feel? When it comes to the expense part of the budget, well, we should always worry about it. But it makes sense, and I think we're in a pattern that is somewhat predictable, and we'll start to see if things go amiss. When it comes to revenue, that's something that we have to sort of start to think about. If we look at our revenue compared to this month, compared to last year, and we adjust it for some timing issues when we get some assessments, we're on target, but the issue we have with revenue is that about 50% of our revenue comes from the state, and that budget hasn't been set yet. Now, we know we're getting closer. There's a House Ways and Means number that now matches the number the Senate came out with. They were the latest number to come out. And now we have to get a conference committee budget that's the final number we're going to live with. When we look at that number, it looks like Chapter 70 will be $110,000 less than we budgeted, and that was based on the governor's original budget. And yes, I know the state has said that nobody is getting a cut in Chapter 70. It has to do with how they do their mathematics, and it's an interesting way of doing it. We're not the only people who will get less money this year than we got last year. But that's a number we're going to have to live with, and better to know it early in the year than find out in May. So at least there's something we can do about it. We talked about transportation. At this point in time, it looks like we will be getting $157,000 less in transportation reimbursement. That's a function of two things. One is the reimbursement rate, and that hasn't been finally set, so that needs to be finally set. And much as Chapter 70 hasn't been finally set yet. I mean, we need to see what they're going to come up with. And also, they reimburse us this year on what we spent last year. And I think the committee may remember, we did not spend the full amount last year because we were closed for a significant portion of the year. And so we didn't pay the full transportation bill last year. So those are the things that we're dealing with when it comes to revenue, and those are some of the questions, and we need some finality on the state budget. A little while ago, the superintendent mentioned the CARES Act, the money we're getting from Plymouth County. And we have been working with the towns of Whitman and Hanson in order to access those funds. Those funds will flow through the towns. They don't come to us directly. And both towns have been very cooperative. On September 29th, we filed paperwork for a reimbursement of about $431,500. These are big numbers. And on November 12th, we requested an additional $146,100 in reimbursement. Now, just this week, in fact, on Monday, we got some questions that the county has, reasonable questions about some of those expenses, and we'll respond to them. Those funds have been used to purchase an awful lot of personal protective equipment, sanitation equipment, cleaning supplies, those sorts of things. It funded the necessary modifications we needed to make to the HVAC system. Not that there was anything wrong with the system to begin with, but requirements have changed. The expectation for air quality has changed, and it costs money to meet those standards. And finally, it supported some changes that we needed to make in technology, both in software, some of the items that Jeff and George have talked about, the programs we're providing, as well as hardware, some computers for students, and hardware here in terms of the system that monitors it. So that's what we've used the money for. We also are expecting an additional $400,000. And I think the committee may remember that Representative Cutler and Senator Brady secured that funding for the district. Now, excuse me, with the addition of that $400,000, I fully expect we'll be able to get through this year without any particular issues, despite the fact it's been unusually challenging compared to most other years.
Anyone have any questions for John? Dawn?
Is there additional CARES Act money available with both of the towns, and are we looking to spend more?
We are looking to help the town spend their money, and they're aware of it. I sort of joke about it. They're aware of it. We have encumbered another $513,000 in anticipated expenses. Those are cases where we have issued purchase orders and we're waiting for delivery. Chromebooks is one of those items. It's a significant portion of that $513,000 is Chromebooks that we would put in the hands of students. And we're talking about some other items as well.
Okay.
So just to refresh on CARES, we can't collect or we can't submit until we get a receipt, until we get an invoice. So we are waiting on that, and we're hoping that Plymouth County can actually extend that out, because we don't know. We've ordered the Chromebooks, George, we ordered those in September.
First batch we're still waiting for was July, then September, yes.
So we're still waiting for delivery on that, which we will then submit. And John's been talking to both John and Lisa and the two town accountants, so they have an idea of what we have coming as well.
Yeah, the CARES Act expires on. We have to have received the materials and had beneficial use of the items by December 30th, received an invoice and paid that. So we need to cut a check as well. Mr. Hayes need to be on deck for us towards the end of the month. We may be running a special warrant to get those checks in the mail. There has been talk, just as an aside, with the state and the federal government about some of these issues of delivery. And we may see some relief that says if you ordered them well in advance, I mean, I don't want to hear about an order that went out on December 1st, but if you ordered in September and at that time you expected delivery that would be anticipated delivery, reasonably expected to have it well before the end of December, there may be some leeway there. So we're also waiting to hear what comes out of that.
Anyone else? John, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So just on budget, I just wanted to remind the committee that we were invited to attend the Whitman FinCom meeting in December, I believe December 15th. you were invited, I sent you that. On that note too, I also received a request to meet with the FinCom liaison, Mrs. Otina, to meet with me to review our budget. And I responded, I really like Mrs. Otina. I hired her to long-term sub here. She's a great person. But I had to decline the offer because I feel like it would be inappropriate for me to share information about the school budget with one FinCom member or one member of the community versus both. So I would ask that a person from Hanson, or I meet with the two of those folks, or if I meet with a couple of selectmen, to talk about a budget for FY '22. And I know we have to have a budget for FY '22, but as I said a little bit before, we're still in the midst of not having an FY '21 budget. So we will start to speculate on our expenses of what we're going to have. And I'm still waiting to get some guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on what it should look like. So we have some rough ideas, but what I don't want to do is float numbers around to both communities that aren't necessarily accurate, that are just real unrealistic projections, because that's going to hit social media like wildfire. So we will talk at the FinCom meeting a little bit about some of our processes and some of the problems that we might have financially moving forward into FY '22. So it's nothing against Mrs. Otina, it's nothing against the Whitman FinCom, but I really feel after last year, when folks on both sides of the table said that I wasn't being transparent with one community or the other, that this was just setting me up to fail or to not have good, open communications with both communities. So if I'm invited to Hanson, if I'm invited to Whitman, if we're invited as a committee, and I also feel, and this is an I statement, I feel much more comfortable sharing information with my bosses first than other folks out in both communities. So I'd like to share information with you folks first, or with you jointly, before I go and speak to members of each town as a citizen, or as an elected official, or as an appointed official. So that's where I stand with that. And I just wanted the committee to know where we're at and make sure that you want to attend. I believe it's going to be a Zoom meeting in December, and we'll offer just what we offered last year to the Whitman FinCom, some overviews of our district budget.
Mr. Chair?
Chris? I got Chris, Dan, and then Fred. Chris?
Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Jeff, did you have any correspondence or dialogue with Hanson FinCom?
I have not. I know Bob had talked to Mr. I believe it's Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell.
So we haven't reached out, or
Yes, I reached out to him. He's going to get back to us.
so we talked about that at least a month ago, right?
This was probably a week and a half ago, Jeff, 2 weeks, because
Well,
I
thought
called
we
him, then I
came up
called
last
you.
Meeting, no? I thought we discussed this at last meeting.
So we discussed not having a subcommittee, but about not having a budget subcommittee, and then I received the invite to the FinCom meeting, and then a personalized, a one-to-one meeting. So I think if we can formally, I can't force, or I don't think Bob, for anybody here can force Hanson to bring a member forward. I think also our budget process is pretty laid out, that we produce a budget and we have a formal presentation here in February. If both towns want to have a pre-discussion meeting, I'm open to that. But I haven't heard from Mr. Sullivan yet or Mr. Mitchell yet.
Dan?
I was going to ask basically the same question. Do we reach out? Now that we reached out, how long should we wait to get a response back from Hanson? Because we're talking transparency again, but if they're not reaching out back to us when we're trying to reach out to be transparent, how long do we
Well,
sit?
I think, Dan, maybe just so everybody's on the same page, you send them a formal letter.
Sure. I can do that as well. I know last year, Hanson didn't have a FinCom meeting that we were invited to. The year prior to, we were, but last year we did not. So my first year as a superintendent, we had a meeting. Last year, we didn't. I hope to have that communication again, except that meeting wasn't until March, when we actually presented our formal budget. So I can draft a formal letter to both communities. I know we've been invited to one FinCom meeting, but for a sit-down with, and I don't know if Hanson's going to have a Board of Selectmen liaison. I know Whitman does, and I have conversations with Mr. LaMontina frequently, updating him on where we're at as well, so he knows where we're at.
Fred?
Yeah, a couple things, and I don't know if anyone had the opportunity to see the Finance Committee meeting last night, but I'm a little confused slightly, but he said it was a travesty that the superintendent would not meet with the FinCom. And I'm very confused to, what he was talking about. I know, your answer to Ms. Otina here, but I don't know what he meant, and, quite frankly, I didn't feel too comfortable after hearing that. I had steam coming out of my ears. So I just don't think that tit-for-tat type of discussion has any place in town politics. That's my personal. And, sorry about that. So I did take great offense to that. The other thing, I know we have the liaison from the FinCom, but I don't know what the liaison's defined role is. And I think, to me, a liaison is someone that tries to, get information, goes as a conduit back and forth between the two boards. Not particularly someone that comes to our meetings or meets one-on-one with the superintendent or affects policy of the school committee. That's what our job is. Quite frankly, Ms. Oteen is a very, very smart woman. She does bring some very good things to the table and very good insights. But as any citizen, if they had a question, she was questioning class sizes and a few other things last night in the FinCom meeting. As a private citizen, I think she should follow the protocol, go to the building principal, and start there and ask the questions. Granted, she has a relationship with the superintendent, but, in these days, I think our superintendent's stretched quite thin as well. I wanted to get that off my chest, and the other thing, I don't know what good it really does to meet with any FinCom right now. Our budget is a statutory budget. We can guesstimate and throw around some general numbers, but until we get, the minimum local contributions, you can't perform a formula to see where we stand. We can know what we need to spend, but we don't know how things are going to break out. That's the way I feel. Until you get the governor's budget and you get those numbers, you just have no clue.
Okay, Jeff?
No, I think Mike had a question.
Mike, I'm sorry.
Yes, Fred touched on most of it, but what are we looking for from Hanson? A liaison to someone that sits here through a meeting, or what is it that we're asking Hanson to do?
I think we just want to reach out and make sure that, they know we're available to talk and get the process going.
But is that what we asked
Whitman's
them?
already meeting with us on the 15th.
Is that what we asked Hanson, or do we ask for a person? What did we ask the town of Hanson for? I know Mrs.
Yes, we
Otina
have.
comes, we asked for a specific
They've met with us
person.
different times, yes.
I'm gonna write a formal letter, ask for a liaison, and what I see as a liaison is if I give information to one town, I have a point person to give information to another. So if I'm giving out a preliminary budget number, so if we present something at Whitman FinCom on the 7th, on whatever date, the 15th, I send it right to the liaison from the Hanson FinCom and/or selectmen, so they have an idea of what was just presented, they don't have to necessarily watch the meeting. Or if somebody asks me, or if they have a question, that liaison sends me an email to say, hey, look, we're looking for some information here, both communities get it. Because that's where, again, I got jammed up last year. People were asking me for all different things, from the selectmen, from the FinCom, from residents, asking me different things, and then folks said, well, you didn't share that information with us, and I don't necessarily have a point person. So I would give something to Mr. Lamontina, and on the flip side, Hanson said, you didn't give it to us. So I need a point person, or at least a contact, to say, here's where it comes. And on the flip side, I just don't want any random person, and, I'm open to the public, but somebody from a different committee to say, hey, can we get this information? I don't have the staff and I don't have the time to be able to do that, because people are asking for a lot of stuff. Again, we go back to records requests, we go back to different things that we've sent off. We're still we lost a central office person last year due to retirement. We didn't fulfill that. We have a part-time business manager who's knee-deep in COVID stuff too. So I would like that, and I will formulate that letter to say, hey, look, If it's going to one town, it's going to another. I just want to have a point person.
Hillary?
I just, I just am, I don't know if concerned is the right word, and I do understand having liaisons in the spirit of transparency. I'm just concerned about, we're the school committee and we're the ones who say this is how much it's going to cost to run the school, right? We want full-day kindergarten for everybody for free. This is how much this is going to cost. We're going to need to hire 6 more teachers to drive class size down. This is how much this is going to cost. My concern in having liaisons, I guess to reiterate your question, is other than being the point person, you know, they don't, I don't want this to come across the way it's going to sound, but they don't have or shouldn't have a voice in our decisions as a school committee on what we feel is going to be best to educate the students of Whitman Hanson. And I know that probably sounds a lot harsher than I mean it to sound, but I just am very nervous, and I want to be cautious about the role that we are assigning the liaisons from. I mean, right now, they're only from Whitman. So, you know, I think that if we're truly going to have it in transparency, we have to get representatives from Hanson, or we just don't have the representatives or the liaisons from Whitman. And they can do what everyone else does and come to our meetings and get the information that way. I just am concerned where, I understand wanting numbers. I understand wanting that, but I don't know, does that make sense? I'm nervous to that, and perhaps it's my own ignorance in understanding that role. I don't know, should we talk about the roles that those liaisons are going to have and what kind of, you know, boundaries there will be? Anything like that? Has that been established? Was I not part of this? I don't know. Am I the only one who has concerns about this? I don't know.
Can I just respond
ahead,
a little
Jeff.
bit? So thank you, because you are my evaluators, and you set the budget. And we try to, John, George, my teachers, whoever presents here tries to give you an idea of what we need, and I need you folks to drive our budget and to listen to us and drive where we are. What I don't want to do is get in the weeds with different people and different numbers, and Mr. Small, you just mentioned class size things, and that's information I like to share with you, again, as my bosses, as the school committee members who drive that, and it's public information, it's great, but public information, like I said, I gave you enrollment numbers today, but if I didn't give you homeschool numbers, you wouldn't know that. And that's not necessarily in a DESI report right now. And those homeschool kids are gonna come back into classrooms next year that we assume they're gonna come back, but I don't know. So I talked to the principals today and said, count on these kids coming back next year, but they might not, but they might, and I might need more teachers. So I agree with you, Ms. Niffen, about the budget. You guys drive that budget, and I don't want to get in the weeds with folks. I want to have transparency. I don't want 2 budget cycles. The first year, we laid people off. Last year was, as you know, just long. And we got our budget. I think we have great community support, and I think people want to drive that budget, and they want to support the schools. But I do believe that this committee's charge is to develop a budget that will sustain an education and drive our education forward for the students of this district, and provide an opportunity for growth for them, and provide a good employment opportunity for our teachers and our staff.
Dawn?
Right. We, as a committee, own the budget, so I don't think that any liaison to our committee from a town board is going to have oversight or say in our budget. From watching finance committee meetings in Whitman, the way I interpret the liaison role is more on their side, that is their eyes and ears to the school committee. So Ms. Otina watches our meetings, may attend, and she reports back to her committee. So it's more the liaison role from their point of view, like that's their, so that they all don't have to watch our meeting and get it. So she reports back to them. And I think it would be helpful to know who the eyes and ears are from the Hanson perspective, and that's the point person that evidently would be, you know, watching our meetings and report back to them. That's my understanding of that, as well as a Board of Selectmen member. So maybe if we saw that person here at our meeting, we'd say, oh, that's the person that's going to report back to FinCom and Board of Selectmen. That's how I see that.
Dan?
Mr. Chair?
Dan, Fred, then you, Fred.
I could put a little light on this. I don't know how Hanson Selectmen handle it, probably the same way. But Whitman, they each have liaisons to all the departments. We're a department, we're the school department, we run the school department. So they wouldn't have really a say over our budget. But they do have like certain people assigned, like Randy Lamontina, the selectman, he's our liaison. They have somebody go to the fire department, they have somebody for the police department, the DPW, et cetera, all the way down. That's how they kind of control reaching out and getting information back in, because they, they do have to have their budgets, and we're just the biggest piece of the pie, one department. But we still control, like we're saying, we still control the budget. We're the ones that create what we need for the school district. But, sometimes we have to sit back and realize, yeah, I'd like to see a $60 to $70 million budget so we can do what we're supposed to be doing for these children. It isn't going to happen because there's no money in the bank for both towns to handle that. But the liaisons are basically just conduits back and forth from different heads. You get the three heads. You got the school department, you have the FinCom, you have the selectmen. They're the ones that control all the budgets. And that's basically what the liaison does from the selectmen's point, from what I've seen for the last 15, 16 years of watching them. They all just reach out. I mean, I was on recreation. You had a liaison in the recreation department too. So they just reach out. They have no control over you. It's just an informational type position.
Fred?
Well, and if you watched the FinCom meeting last night, I think that they're very much overstepping their bounds. They're an advisory committee, but yet Ms. Otina clearly states she wants documents, and there are particular documents that she wants concerning, class size, I believe it was, and I'm just going off my scrambled recollection, but there were 3 or 4 different documents that she named that she wants. I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing information. I think it's how the information gets shared in the respect of different committees. For instance, they brought up in their meeting non-mandated busing. I know that's been a topic, and at the same time it was brought up, and through you, Chair, to Ms. Byers, the chairman of the FinCom said that he had been in conversation with Don Byers about non-mandated busing. I don't know about that, but all of a sudden that came out in their meeting. I don't know what was discussed. I know as a committee, I don't believe that's something we've discussed, since last year. And I don't know that that's a decision that this committee makes. I think that's more of a town decision. We would facilitate something that the town decided to do, but, at least that's sort of the way I look at non-mandated busing. I just think that the FinCom is there to advise the taxpayer on financial matters, and that's what their charge is. And I think at times it seems like it's overstepping and overstretching. That's my personal opinion.
Ms. Byers would like to answer.
Okay, and I'm just saying that was brought up by the chair of the FinCom.
Okay, Dawn has her hand up. Go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Fred.
Yes, I'm aware that Chair Anderson brings up my name often in regards to non-mandated busing, and I have been advocating or asking questions about this since 2018, when I was a private citizen. So when he makes reference to conversations I had with FinCom, it goes back to 2018. I emailed Dr. Kowalski, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, to ask about non-mandated busing. I saw it was a large line item on the budget, and the fact that it's called non-mandated means it's not required. So as a private citizen, I wondered, we're spending money on this at the time. I knew the school needed money on other things. So that's the nature of those conversations that he references to. They do go back several years.
If I could respond, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Are you speaking?
By the tone, tenor, and texture of his voice and his comment it was a recent conversation, and that's just, my interpretation from watching it, and I would just urge anyone to watch it and, make their own decision. That was just sort of the way I took it when I was watching it earlier.
Okay.
Chair Hayes.
Go ahead, Dawn. We're not going to do a lot more back and forth, though, guys. We're running some time here. Go ahead, Dawn, I'm sorry.
Right, but I have asked questions recently of Chair Hayes and Superintendent, just in regards to our bus transportation contract being up this year. And, to look at all our expenses and what we're spending money on and how we could work with the towns and potentially offer an opt-out portion, like we are doing this year already for COVID, parents opting out. If your child doesn't need a seat on the bus, then why are we paying, or why is the town paying for a seat on a bus? We ask parents to pay $3,200 for full-day kindergarten, but we pay for empty seats on buses. So that's a conversation maybe for a different time, but it is something relevant this year, I think, with renewing our bus contract.
Okay. Anyone else? Jeff, are you done with the report?
I'm good with budget. Yep, I'm all done. Thank you.
Okay. Subcommittee reports. Before we get that, I'm sorry, installation of solar-powered light by the social veterans. Indian Head School has a big giant flagpole in front of Memorial Hall, and if you remember correctly, it was on September 9th, and I'll read the letter quickly. We approved donation of a solar-powered light at the flagpole at Indian Head Elementary School, so the flag can be flown in the evening outside of Memorial Hall. We would like to acknowledge not only the recent solar light installation, but also the new American flag for the flagpole. We're proud to learn this was accomplished just in time for Veterans Day. This is on behalf of the Whitman Hanson Regional School District and school committee members. We're writing to thank the Socio Veterans Association for the generous donation to the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. If you know anything about SSVA, Dave Andrews is the treasurer, Matt Olson, and I'm probably skipping a bunch of names, but they're a great organization that takes care of veterans in numerous ways, and they are very generous in donating the solar light and a new flag for that flagpole in front of Memorial Hall. So we're thanking them. Thank you very much for that donation. Subcommittee reports. Pilgrim Area Collaborative.
Yes, we met by Zoom on November 5th. We do like a 6 p.m. as we had done here this evening, and we're usually done by 7. There's been obviously updates from the executive director, although I don't think to Dawn and I and others, she sent out any other continuing updates, but at least for what we covered with our meeting, and we do this every year, I mentioned about the annual audit that was done. We approved the auditor for this fiscal year, but for next year. We also look at our money that we have taken in from tuitions, and for the member towns, which I believe is about 8 or 9 of us, we are giving back money. While my focus obviously is Whitman Hanson, we're at the bottom of the list, in a good way alphabetically, and we spent, I think, $187,000 roughly last fiscal year, or last school year. We're returning $5,952 to the district as monies that were, after we do our tuitions and when it comes down to it, we realize it's more honing in on the services that were provided and the actual costs, and that's where some of this money comes from. 25% is set aside, when we have done this historically, for member communities to return that money, and I think the total of the amount that we were working off of was more than 25% of it was $72,000. So we should see a significant amount. John, you can put that on the revenue for next month, if you get the check that soon. But anyways, I just think it was important to say that. A lot of times we also discuss, because we are trustees for the Pilgrim Area Collaborative, the retirees and so forth, certain things that we need to put towards OPEB and various things. And so that discussion came up about using some of that money for that. But basically it was a regular meeting, and the good news came out, almost $6,000. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Any questions for Mr. Boyce? Facilities, Fred.
We haven't met, we gave the report last time, although we did, I believe the whole committee received an updated matrix, a little bit of a cleaner look with project schedules and completion rates on them, which I think look nice. I don't know if anyone has any questions on any of those.
So Fred, I sent it to facilities first, so you could report on it today, and I'm gonna send it out to the rest of the committee tomorrow. So we updated our matrix, our capital matrix, with what we got from the facility subcommittee and this committee last month or the month before, as far as projects in progress, when they were funded. It's a much cleaner document. It's a much more usable document for me. I shared that with Dave Cadero. We'll share that with Mr. Stanbrook, because Hanson's looking for that on November 20th. So we updated it. It should be a cleaner look for you folks. It's a living document with us. You'll get a PDF, and we'll update it probably quarterly as we go.
Great. Chair Hayes,
Yes,
could I give a 30-second legislative update?
I've got that at the bottom, Fred.
Okay.
I already wrote it in. I know it wasn't there, but I got you at the bottom, so we'll get to it in a minute.
Thank you.
Policy Subcommittee, Dawn?
We have not had a meeting, and we don't have one scheduled right now.
Thank you. Insurance Subcommittee?
I believe we're scheduling a meeting. Mr. Tuffy, is it December 2nd?
Yes.
Indeed it is. We're hoping to meet, let me look at my
So
notes.
we'll have our first meeting the 2nd at 5 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. We'll go over our review of the policies, et cetera, and then take our next steps to get some proposals
Okay,
from there.
thank you. Negotiation Subcommittee, as you know, it's been chosen, and we added Lisa Green this evening. We're going to be, go ahead, Jeff.
So let me just float this out there. We've been looking on the MASBO listserv, and I ran this by area superintendents, just asked people who was negotiating this year and what you're doing. And I kind of floated this by Mr. Kafka, who's here, about the potential of just extending the contract another year instead of going through the negotiation process, because we don't have an idea of what FY '23 and '24 might look like. Just feeling it out, nothing committing to the committee, but I know Kevin had sent us a letter of negotiation. I said to get back to his people to see how that flavor would feel. About 3/4 of the area superintendents that are negotiating this year are looking at a 1-year extension of their contract instead of trying to negotiate in a pandemic right now. So it's just something we've talked about. I wanted to share that with this committee. Kevin's had no commitments yet. It was just a conversation, and I think we can continue. I know we wanted to get Lisa Green on board as a municipal person, but I think as a subcommittee, we can meet and then talk about our flavor of that process.
Thank you.
And Mrs.
Question?
McGann is here. I know you
I didn't-
probably can't see her, but
Cindy, I showed him pictures of your classroom today. Yeah, you were in one.
you were. Very nice.
Thank you. Regional Agreement Committee?
Nothing to report. We haven't.
Okay. Fred, legislative report?
Appreciate it. Just wanted to update the committee. Allison Sullivan did try for a couple of earmarks for us. One was $800,000 to complete the Duval roof, and the other was $500,000 for full-day kindergarten. There were no earmarks that were accepted. It did fail, and we do want to thank her for the good old the college try anyways, and I was hoping that the committee would approve us to send a letter and thanking her for her efforts. And as always, we appreciate anything and everything that they can do for us. It may be a supplemental later in 21 for the FY 21. Once they get FY 21 original budget done, who knows what can happen then. But we're still crossing our fingers, and we'll still be going to the plate to that, and hopefully someday soon.
Questions for Fred? Thank you, Fred. Ladies and gentlemen, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved by Dan?
Second.
Seconded. Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Colony,
Yes.
Mr. Boyce.
Yes.
Mr. Forth. Yes. Mr. Howard. Yes. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Niffen.
Yes.
Bob Hayes, yes. Dawn.
Yes.
Myers, yes. Mr. Scriven. I almost forgot you. Thank you, we're adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
David.
Thanksgiving.